Hi everyone, so I wanted to show you how I made my Winter Warrior Princess's armour. So first of all I took some fun foam and made a piece to go around her chest, and then I took another piece of the fun foam to go around her body. And what I'm doing here is heating it up with my heat gun, and that makes the foam go a little softer, and if you squeeze it, it molds around the shape of the doll and actually stays in that shape, which is quite useful, which is why I wanted to give this a try. Now obviously it looks like I'm just making a skirt at the minute, but I'm going to make it sectional so it looks like armour, but I wanted the general shape and the general size just so I could have something to work from. I know it doesn't fasten up completely at the back, but that doesn't matter, you'll see later why. So what I'm doing here is trimming it down just so it meets at the top and meets fairly level. And then I did fiddle with this for a bit because I wasn't 100% sure what I was doing, to be fair, and I had a little think about, well, what could I do to make this look a bit more like armour. So I decided to cut it roughly in sectional shapes, and then use those together overlapped to create the armour. So I'm just rubbing with my finger just to create the first shape and then cutting that out of the foam. So at first I was going to make like leg pieces and stuff, but I did change my mind, just cut those two pieces off in the end. I had originally made like an undergarment for her, but I found that was proving to be too bulky, so I just stuck with just sticking the armour directly onto her skin. And then later on, any gaps I just painted the same colour as the armour so it looked like she got underclothes on. So that's why I didn't worry too much about that. Then I'm just using my heat gun just to soften the foam a little bit again, and then just use that to shape that a little bit around the doll. And that was the first section that I'd made. I know it looks a bit rough, but I do neaten it up in a little bit. And then what I've got is some of these like really tiny brads which I found at the craft shop, and I'm using those to make it look like the clothes are, well, the armour is riveted. So basically I push the little brads through, and they're like little split pins but like micro size ones, and push those through and separate the two ends and fold them flat to make them stay in place. I use this later on to tie the armour together as well, to make it look like it's been laced up at the back. So I just put 3 on one side and then 3 on the other side, like so. This is fiddly because it can be quite hard to separate the two little pieces at the back of the split pin, but with perseverance it can be done. And then if it sticks past where the edge of the foam is, then what you need to do is fold the piece of metal in half back on itself. And then the armour is glued into place on the body of the doll, just to secure it, because obviously I'm going to make it so it looks like it's laced on, but really it's glued on. So that was the first piece that I made. Then it was a case of figuring out how I was going to do the leg armour or the other pieces. So here I'm experimenting with different shapes and deciding what do I want it to look like, how do I want it to fit, and then I decided that's how I liked it, was where it overlaps. So I cut out another piece the same size as this one. It's kind of triangular but just with 2 of the corners chopped off. And then I'll put a little dab of glue in the middle just to hold them together, and that makes them look like they're overlapping plates, as it were. And then I decided to make a third one. I decided it would be better if it was a little bit longer. And again, just use a little dab of hot glue to hold it together. Now I know at the minute you're thinking, well, this is not going to look like armour, but trust me, by the time it's all painted up and everything, you can make it look like armour. Then obviously I wanted to make this look like it was riveted as well, so I added some more of those little micro split pins, the little brads I think they're called. And I added those to either side. Again, it's just to make it look like the armour's bolted together. And it'll just add to the effect when the armour's painted. If you're wondering why she's missing her hands, I took her hands off while I was working on her outfit. It's just easier if they're not in the way, especially if I've got to thread her arms through like a thin sleeve or anything. Just makes life a bit easier. So once I glued the skirt in place, then it was time to work on the shoulder armour. So for that I cut out two almost semicircle shapes. They're like bent L shapes, as you can see, and added little brads to the corners, and then those were designed to be glued on to the chest plate and then folded around the back. This is just to provide the illusion of, again, it's bolted together so it's flexible and moves, and also it provides protection of the shoulders. And I actually used the brads to hold the two pieces of foam together, which worked really well. And then I just glued down the back to the doll just to make it stay in place where I wanted, because obviously I didn't want it to stick out at the back. So that's the first sections of armour done, and then it was a case of working on arm cuffs. I only made the one arm cuff because the other one I actually found an Ever After High arm cuff from another doll, because what I've done for this doll is used part this foam stuff and part bits I found around the house in the doll box that I could use. So I cut a squared piece off that's rounded at the corners and then got a little like crescent shape cut out the top. And this is to create some more armour. And I cut out 3 of those in the end, I believe, because at this point I was still going to make 2 lower arm like coverings, but I changed my mind in the end, you'll see. So my idea first of all was to overlap them again like I did for the skirt part, but I did change my mind about this. You'll see later on I change it. And the idea was going to be that those shoulder pieces, I was going to stick 2 of these under each one, but I felt it looked a bit too bulky and it also looked a bit weird, so in the end I didn't bother. Sorry about me being slightly off camera. I've changed my desk, like I've recovered it and everything, so everything's moved ever so slightly. I haven't got the I used to have some little bits of tape on my old desk just to give me a clue as to where the camera, like which part of the desk the camera focuses on, but I forgot to do that for this video. So anyway, I made one small piece as an arm cuff and glued that into position on the doll like so. I did have to add hot glue a couple of times because it kept peeling up. I should have heated it like I did the other bits really, but it was a bit fiddly and I didn't know how I was going to hold it and not burn myself, so I just held it in place while the glue dried. You'll see me periodically clean off my desk, the bits were getting on my nerves. I was just creating like hundreds and hundreds of bits of foam and it was everywhere. Then I used this silver ribbon to make it look like the arm cuff was strapped on. So for this I added a little bit of hot glue to the end of the ribbon. I did do that in the end. For some reason I changed my mind at this point. I did put her hands back on at this point just to see how the general look of the doll was and to see what I wanted to change. And this is where I'd found in my doll box the piece of armour off a previous doll, so I've stuck that onto this one. Because I decided it didn't matter if it was foam or if it was plastic, because I would paint it all to match anyway. So here I'm changing my mind and I've took off the piece of foam. I don't know why. I think I wasn't quite sure how it looked at that time. I wanted to thin it down and make it fit the arm a bit better. But as you see, by heating up the foam just a touch, it made it fit a lot better. So I restuck that cuff into place and used ribbon, and then I painted all the armour blue just as like a base coat. And at first I was going to do it some sections blue and then add silver sections, and what I'm doing here is using embossing powder. Embossing powder, it looks dull and sand-like when you apply it, but then once you heat it up with a heat gun, it turns metallic and it goes really shiny. It's used in card making and that sort of thing. I decided in the end I really like that though, so I did the whole armour silver and there's just the odd hint of blue here and there sticking out. Then I stuck a piece that I found from a Raven Queen doll. It's like a shoulder piece to the top of the armour, and the crown is from another Raven Queen doll which I stuck on her head. Then I took a triangular shaped piece of fake fur and wrapped that round her shoulders and glued it into position to make it look like she'd got some sort of woolen cape or like furry cape or cloak on to protect her from the cold. And as you can see, the pieces that were from another doll, from another Ever After High doll, I did the same treatment on, where I put the silver gilding powder on and then, well, embossing powder, and then heated it up to make it shiny. Now here I'm just toning down the shine of the armour a little bit. I want it to look like it's been in battle. I don't want it to look like brand new armour. I just wanted to add a bit of depth to it. So what I did is just dry brushed on some black paint and then wiped that off with a baby wipe, and that just, it dulls down the silver a little bit so it looks a bit more metal, and also it makes it look like the armour's a little bit older, so it's a bit used. And as you can see on the chest plate, I added a jewel which I found in my jewellery box. And I did the skirting detail slightly at the back as well, and as you can see, what I've done is wrap some string around, like very thin silver twine around the brads at the back to make it look like it's laced up at the back. And then there's some little, like, it's like a faux leather that I used to cover her legs, like cover her thighs. I felt they were a bit unprotected, and in battle I should imagine those would be covered. And then painted those to match the rest of the armour. Here I'm painting the, I've covered the Raven Queen piece of armour on the arm with silver and then just touched that up to match with the black dry brushing as well. And that's it. That's my Winter Warrior Princess doll. Hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.